everyone, and welcome to Pocketful of English with Miss Ina. In English grammar, verbs have 5 properties: mood, tense, person, number, and voice. In today's lesson, our focus is the voice of verbs. The voice of a verb tells us whether the subject of a sentence is completing an action or if an action is being done to the subject. Action verbs can have 2 voices, active or passive. What's the difference between the two? Which voice of the verb is better to use? Let's find out today. But before we begin our lesson, let me remind you that I prepared a short quiz after the lesson, so you have to be ready. I think everybody's ready to learn. Come on, let's begin.
Active and passive voice. What is the voice of the verb? The voice of the verb refers to the relationship between the subject and the action. The voice of the verb tells us whether the subject is the doer of the action or the receiver of the action. What's the difference between an active voice and a passive voice? Let's discuss active voice first. English has 2 voices, active and passive. If the verb has an active voice, then the subject is the doer of the action. The active voice is more common than the passive. Let's look at some examples of active voice. The teacher answers the students' questions. The basic active voice structure is subject, verb, and object. In this sentence, the subject is the teacher. The verb is answers. The object is the students' questions. The subject, the teacher, performs the action described by answers. I will clean my room tomorrow. The basic active voice structure is subject, verb, object. In this sentence, the subject is I. The verb is will clean. The object is my room. The subject I performs the action described by will clean. The dog chased the cat. The basic active voice structure is subject, verb, object. In this sentence, the subject is the dog. The verb is chased. The object is the cat. The subject, the dog, performs the action described by chased. Let's now discuss passive voice. If the verb has a passive voice, then the action is happening to the subject. The passive voice creates a new subject. Using the passive voice changes the focus of your sentence. In passive sentences, the object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive sentence. The subject can be a person, an animal, or an inanimate object. What are the uses of passive voice? 1. When you want to emphasize the action itself. 2. When the reader does not need to know who did an action. 3. When you do not want to emphasize who did an action, as long as you leave out the by phrase, preposition by, and the name, for example, by Adele. Only transitive verbs, verbs which take a direct object, can be made passive. Some examples of transitive verbs are break, make, buy. Intransitive verbs do not take an object and cannot be made passive. Examples of intransitive verbs are cry, go, laugh. Let's look at some examples of passive voice. The students' questions are answered by the teacher. The passive sentence consists of the students' questions, subject, are answered, the verb, a form of to be plus the past participle answered, by a preposition, the teacher, the object. Making the sentence passive flips the structure of the sentence. A passive sentence uses the preposition by. The cat was chased by the dog. The passive sentence consists of the cat, subject, was chased, a verb, a form of to be plus the past participle chased, by a preposition, the dog, the object. Making the sentence passive flips the structure of the sentence. A passive sentence uses the preposition by. My room will be cleaned by me tomorrow. The passive sentence consists of my room, subject, will be cleaned, the verb, a form of to be plus the past participle cleaned, by a preposition, me, the object. Making the sentence passive flips the structure of the sentence. A passive sentence uses the preposition by. Let's look at some more examples of passive voice. The diamond necklace was stolen. The rule should be obeyed. Letters are delivered twice a day. You will notice that these sentences do not have a by phrase. A by phrase is not included when it adds repetitive, unimportant, or unspecific information, or when the speaker is avoiding mention of the agent or the doer of action. How do we change active voice to passive? Look at the following. Present simple. He writes a book. A book is written. Past simple. He wrote a book. A book was written. Future simple. He will write a book. A book will be written. Present continuous. He is writing a book. A book is being written. Past continuous. He was writing a book. A book was being written. Future be plus going to. He is going to write a book. A book is going to be written. Present perfect. He has written a book. A book has been written. Past perfect. He had written a book. A book had been written. Modal. He must write a book. A book must be written. Modal perfect. He should have written a book. A book should have been written. Before we conclude today's lesson, let's have a quick comparison between active and passive voice. In the active voice, the subject is the doer of the action. In the passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. Use the active voice when the doer of the action is specific. Use the passive voice when the doer of the action is unknown. Use the active voice to emphasize the doer of the action. Use the passive voice to emphasize the receiver of the action. Quiz time! Is the sentence in the active or passive voice? Time to check the answers. Did you get a perfect score? Great job, everyone!
Thank you so much for joining me in today's lesson. Keep learning English the easy way with me. I'll see you again next time.